All right, what the fuck is up? um, yeah, so I have not been making videos because of my harsh disappointment with the world, and I've finally, decided to withhold, or I guess it's like that the artist joke of like, like you punish the world by withholding your beauty from the world, and yeah, so that's been my plan to get back at all the world and all the craziness that I see in the world by doing nothing about it. But I've been thinking deeply about economics now for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And I think I've figured out a pretty good principle. Want to put it out there for you. So it makes sense. It's something you can use, something you can think with and be real with. You've probably seen some of my other videos where I talk about how money itself is a symbol for production, where production can be defined as the exchange of mutual help, services, goods, basically anything that causes a transaction to happen where both people have improved their standard of living. Um, so I have some thoughts about deflation and about let's see. Sorry, I had a lady. She's looking at me. She thinks I'm gonna break into her house or something. Probably. Don't worry, I won't. Um, I have thoughts about deflation, ethics, inflation, and Bitcoin as it is today in the world. Want to give you a yardstick, something you can measure with. And the first thing to know is that creation is, in an economic sense, where economics is defined as the exchange of goods and services, as I said earlier, or trade, could be also of emotions or basically anything of mutual help from one entity in an organization or in an economic sphere or economic system, from one to the other, and then back and forth in reciprocation. But deflation is simply the creation aspect within a society. So in economics, that's where you start in a country or you start in a group and people want to get to work. Um, you know, this would be like all the early Freemasons in the United States, um, getting to work, getting busy, building those buildings, laying down that cornerstone in the true American fashion. Yes, the Freemasons are the true source of deflation in the United States. They are the original producers. They are the anti-parasite, and they also were trying to preserve morals, ironically. But in fact, if you study the Freemasons and their history, you'll see that what they were teaching was actually not morals; it was an ethic. And so, in personal creation or individual creation, um, right and wrong or trade measured, with an equity and economics from the individual's point of view is actually an ethic, not a moral. Although the Freemasons called it morality that they were trying to teach to society, actually what they were trying to do was instill an ethic, or that they like instill enough personal understanding in the individual so that his own creation uh, would be not only beneficial to his own interests, but naturally aligned with the interests of society. A sort of anti-materialism. Um, it's interesting that an ethic is illegal in a society of materialism, where the person, instead of having his own yardstick or compass for what he would like to do and take action for, um, that he has to follow an arbitrary group, sort of democratic point of agreement. That's immoral. But to have a society that thrives and lives, what you want is an ethic, and you want a person to understand things. Now, this is in this going back to the creation stage in a society which is highly deflationary because people are trying to be more efficient. So when people are creative and excited about the future and the things that they're going to build, they're making things better. And it's true like that they are moving through. Entrepreneurs are moving through a lot of commodities, buying lots of stuff, building lots of stuff. However, there's also a sense of improvement and simplification, and the whole philosophy on how far can a society go before it dies. Well, it depends on how long it wants to remain creative, which is how long does it want to try to make things more efficient and thus more and more deflationary. On the back end of the curve, or at the top of the bell curve, you hit a plateau where that would be preservation. So you have creation, preservation. This would be the establishment of assets, a heavy focus on assets and ownership of, you know, uh, property, bitcoins, tangible things, mainly assets, but with no sense of actually where to uh, use those assets in order to achieve further production. And so that gets into a bit of a sort of a problem for the person who has assets. So they don't see much more future opportunity in the society. And I'm going to tie this back into personal understanding in just a second. So at the point, this is where you get into hoarding and you get less and less exchanges. And then on the other side of the bell curve, you have inflation and you have decay, a decay of the economic cycle. Now, going back to the so why is life relatively deflationary in the creationary stage, and why do we want to keep things creative? Well, the individual is most creative when he has a personal understanding of things. So when a person observes things for himself and uses his senses and decides and chooses for himself, the downside is he's prone to make uh, several more errors. The upside is that he's prone to learn from those errors due to necessity, and that he what he needs to do is figure out, okay, so who are the individual to establish an ethic is simply has to figure out, okay, who helps me, who do I need to help, and that's basically mother helps me. Okay, so I need to maintain at least equity with mother by mowing the lawn, cleaning my room, helping her out, smiling at her, finishing my school, getting good grades, all these things. I can maintain an equity with that, with my mother, and thus I'll have a sense of value in that scenario. So the more and more equity I can maintain as an individual, and that knowledge is highly deflationary, because it leads to an efficiency for the individual in terms of, well, how is he going to go out into the environment when he grows up and start producing and start helping the society? And so the more and more personal understanding the guy has, the more and more efficient he's going to be. So lacking personal understanding, the more and more dependent a person has to become on arbitrary information provided by authorities in the society. And of course, several authorities will be ready and eager to provide you with the moral substitute for the ethic. And so voluntarism, just as a side note, is actually founded on the idea of an ethic, and that so I'd also like to do a video later on the redefining voluntarism. I believe that voluntarism is a highly deflationary creative system that appears not to work because the society is in the decay half of the bell curve, and so, but it actually does work. If probably if you look up a word called counter markets, but it's like going against the grain. Okay, so basically on the first part of the creative curve of an economy, things are moving up. Things are getting happier, things are getting easier. You've got faster ways of exchanging goods and services. You've got, vehicles, you've got phones that can replace and minimize the need for several other commodities. And so what happens is things get higher quality and they get much simpler. But the only type of individual that can benefit from a natural deflation is an individual who has a philosophy in his life as of wanting to exchange back with the environment, and realizing that because his time has been freed up due to the technology, and that he now can fulfill his greater obligation to the whole entire species. So that's the perfect purpose of deflation, is to free up the time of the individual. And should the individual be intelligent enough, knowledgeable enough, or enlightened enough, now he can fulfill his greater obligation to the species. And now we have very few people on Earth today who have freed up enough time and have actually reached enough enlightenment to have a personal ethic that drives them to give back, so to speak, to the human race. We have a lot of lip service for that, but this is sort of getting in a little bit beyond capitalism and that kind of stuff. But I want to do a video about that anyways too. But anyway, if you think about it like this: create, survive, persist, destroy, right? And as long as the society keeps on creating, it will remain in a deflationary sort of phase. So what are some of the examples of a deflationary sort of thing? Well, a person being spiritual, finding his own relationship with the universe relative to his own understanding. That's different than finding his own relationship to the universe relative to what his parents tell him he has to believe, or what the priest tells him he has to believe, or someone else tells him that he has to believe. Now, sometimes as children, we will temporarily borrow the authority or the understanding of our parents to survive. But then with the understanding that as we reach adulthood, that rite of passage is actually the restoration of self-determinism for the individual. That's true adulthood. And other symptoms of that, are with puberty and all kinds of stuff. But it's really just the idea that now you're ready to give back because you've been sucking on mother nipple for a few years. And it's time for you to give back. And each life is sort of like this effort to fulfill this obligation that the individual has to sort of reach out as far as he can and make things as efficient and better for himself, family, groups, and hopefully, if he does things well, for the whole species. Yeah, so right now we're in a highly inflationary stage on the decay aspect of the economic cycle. And so those who still who do have personal understanding are still personally creative. People like artists, or a lot of people involved with Bitcoin are like that. And so you see these beautiful contradictory enlightened discussions, and that's because those are highly deflationary people. They probably live as minimalists quite often. They have minimal possessions. They don't go out and purchase random things from Target. They're not the ones using inflows from the material world as a substitute for filling the void for lack of personal understanding. So it's sort of like these individuals in Bitcoin that have discovered their own power, and so within themselves, and so there's no scarcity of that inner energy or whatever it is. So they just want to get out there and spread their pixie dust all over the world and improve the world. Well, those are highly deflationary people. and they teach a sort of minimalism and a philosophy. And this is totally opposite to democracy, to non-scarce money supply, authoritarianism, um, all that kind of stuff as we have in the United States today. So I hope I know this may be a little bit confusing, but my main point for this talk is that as an individual, if you seek a simple deflationary lifestyle, it will become very clear what you as a soul would like to do, what you would like to give. And you stop thinking about what can I take in from Mother Nipple, right? And you throw away your stupid capitalism training that you think that everything is driven by profit, right? Which is, it's just not a sufficient way of viewing the world, right? Although there's elements of capitalism that I love, but it doesn't, capitalism is a tiny branch of a very large tree. And if you can understand economics as trade and exchange, but from your own point of view, you can gain yourself a standard, and that standard is your own personal ethic. It is your understanding, and it's from your own point of view that you can measure whether a trade is providing what is needed and wanted, and hopefully for you, if you want to go anywhere in this series of lives or whatever, you need to find a way to exceed what is needed and wanted. Okay? So ignore all the inflation stuff, drop out of school, burn your books, whatever the fuck you need to do, but realize you're on a personal journey of deflation. It's a spiritual thing. It's you really looking at things instead of just trusting CNN, Mother Nipple, Big Brother, um, someone else to look for you, someone else to understand for you. Okay, that's what's going to change the world, because it's the creative people that can take over when the rest of the people want to light themselves on fire. Okay, so I'm sorry to go so long on this. I feel very passionate about this. I'm going to have a lot of videos coming out about this. I'm doing some music too. I got some music videos I'm going to do. So I hope I'm not boring you with these weird talks, but I don't know. I just obsess about it. I think about it all the time for the last year. And so please drop me a note. I want to talk to you one on one if you got anything you want to say. Thank you very much.